but they've been putting this stuff in our faces. And this is going to be a really, really big part of the whole New World system. But check this out real quick.
So, picture your life in a place where everything you do, what you buy, how you behave, is tracked. The government gives you a score, and the score is a measure of how trustworthy you are as a citizen and determines what you're allowed to do, like ever. Boarding a train, getting a mortgage, all goes back to this score. It's called social credit. It sounds like that show Black Mirror, but it's actually happening in China. So how does that change you? Does it change you? What does your life look like when your every move is watched? The system's eyes are in big data, artificial intelligence, and roughly 200 million surveillance cameras. And that's totally fine with Ouyang Haoyu. She's 21, graduated from a good school with solid grades. She's diligent. She's nice.
Adam's up with her.
No surprise, she's a 752. That's her rating with Sesame Credit, a private company working with the government on the algorithms for the social credit system. The scores go from 350 to 950 and are based on habits and behavior. Buy clothes or diapers, it's good. A lot of alcohol, too many video games, not so good. Haoyu's 752
Corona.
puts her in model citizen range and gets her discounts and privileges, like using a shared bike without a deposit. She likes it. Her friends do too. They all have pretty high scores.
It's a mechanism like pushes you to become a better citizen, to build on the trust, especially on the Chinese market.
Because you're not going to be punished if you haven't done anything wrong.
I think that's the point. I think the system is working as a warning or an alert to push people to do it, to be a good person.
And it's mandatory. When it goes national, social credit scores will be assigned to every one of China's citizens for life. And what's weird is that so many people seem okay with it.
If you're not okay with it, it will affect your score. Think about it. It's the ultimate techno manipulation. It's
complicated, but China went from extreme poverty to economic giant pretty quickly. A credit history system didn't grow at the same pace, so people would default on loans and get away with it. Add in scandals around fake food, tainted baby milk, counterfeit goods, and what you've got is a big problem with trust. So, in 2014, the Communist Party called for a system to allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. The model is a place called Rongcheng. It's in Shandong province. It's orderly. Streets are spotless. Cars slow down, which is unheard of in China. Words like honesty and credibility appear on propaganda posters. Display cases show pictures of Rongcheng's most honored citizens. You start with 1,000 points, and you can print out your report anytime. You lose points for things like jaywalking, littering, tossing cigarette butts, or spreading rumors. Cameras do a lot of the surveillance work, but it's pretty analog too, like posters that list the ways you can gain or lose points. And each night, local TV shows the surveillance highlights of the day. And then there's Zhou Aini. She's an information collector, a paid enforcer who walks around and writes down deeds about her neighbors. Like the man who carried a drunk person home. Things like this are good deeds, she said. But the farmer overheard swearing and being rude? Yeah, bad deeds. Her quota is 10 a month. She likes the work, thinks the city's better for it. The thing about the social credit system is that there isn't one single system. Not yet. Different places have different rules. So what do you do if you have bad social credit? Well, for one, you talk about it on Weibo, which is like Twitter. There are forums for discredited people to vent and get advice. In Chongqing, we hooked up with Huang Huijun. He had a business until he was sued by a client, and Huang refused to pay 90 grand to settle it. So the court put him on a social credit blacklist, and things got way worse. He explains that being blacklisted means he can't buy airplane or train tickets. When he tries, a message pops up saying he's discredited. By the end of last year, blacklisted people were blocked from booking 23 million flights and 5 million high-speed train trips. And the list goes on. Being discredited makes it hard to get a job, a loan, a hotel room, or put kids in certain schools. Then there's the public shaming. Photo galleries of blacklisted citizens. There's even an app that shows who around you is in debt. In China,
Public shaming, like who's not wearing their mask.
being monitored is nothing.
Or for being a Christian. Because ultimately, all this other stuff, it doesn't really matter. What Satan and his implementation of his systems are all about with this techno prison is to force you to worship what he wants you to worship. And remember, he left God over the issue of wanting to be like God and to procure worship. For him, this is all about getting to the one thing that belongs to God and God alone, his glory. And for people to worship and to give that glory to the false god of this world, not Jesus. That's where this is going.
You. But algorithmic surveillance makes it possible to collect data to build detailed profiles of people, especially the ones not loyal to the government. Of all the video surveillance cameras on the planet right now, nearly half of them are in China.
Wow.
Are people bothered by privacy concerns?
So we think a lot of camera keep the safety is really good things. A lot of people, we can accept it.
And cameras are getting smarter.
So the information that comes up from my image identifies that I'm female, middle-aged, talks about whether I'm wearing glasses, the shape of my face.
AI is taking them next level. They can do more than just see. They actually understand who they're seeing. So at what point can the technology know too much? Does it already?
Most time, people don't care about it. But if the technology learns too much, for example, cross the red line, it's not very good.
How far?
This is the beast system. This is how Lucifer will be omniscient like God. He will know everything at once, just like the Most High. But he's copying God because he has to use technology where, of course, God doesn't. This is unreal.
Right, but then taking a step further. So Satan, I agree with everything Chuck just said. Now, Satan is going to have his imposter, Jayish, Mashiach as well. And that Mashiach is going to be the proto, the third Adam, the do-over per those who have rejected Jesus. He's going to be the third branch. Adam was one, last Adam, Jesus was two, and the final as far as truth. And then this third Adam Kadmon, Adam Techno, Adam AI enhanced, Adam superhuman, Adam means man, superhuman human, and he's going to be hooked up to the AI and hooked up to all of this stuff. He's going to be the beast. He's going to be the enforcer of all of this evil, the man of sin, the son of perdition.
How far away from needing to draw those red lines?
He's going to offer this at the guillotine to mankind after 3.5 years to say, you can also become just like me. I'm God in human flesh. And you just have to take this handy dandy little mark of the beast into your right hand or your forehead and get into that financial system through worshiping me, and we will hook you up to AI and make you gods, just like I am. That's what's going on. That's what's coming.
It's very hard to say. I think maybe decades, I mean 10 years or 20 years, 15 years maybe.
That's not very long.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
And where does it all go?
Number 8, we will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately.
Health experts have long used contact tracing to stop epidemics like Ebola, and they're trying to use it to stop COVID-19. But getting already suspicious Americans to cooperate so that it works effectively will be tough. The CDC even gives contact tracing the creepy term of public health surveillance. Using either Bluetooth or location services on your phone, contact tracing apps record who we've been in contact with in case people nearby have COVID-19. Nations like Singapore are already using it.
Get peace of mind for you and your family through community-driven contact tracing.
Now, House Bill 6666. The COVID-19 Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone or TRACE Act would give $100 billion to local organizations to help with testing and contact tracing by funding door-to-door outreach. Contrary to what some believe, it does not allow anyone to enter your home or allow the government to remove anyone from your home because of coronavirus.
Well, that's not what the World Health Organization has gone around saying. And this Christian broadcast network, they're right on par with 700 Club. These are Masons. These are multi-million-dollar Masons making money in the name of Jesus. This is a game they're playing.
This woman is being scolded for being outside without a face mask and was chased back into her home. These people are being admonished for hanging out in a group. They were all caught by Chinese authorities who've been deploying drones equipped with high-resolution cameras and loudspeakers. It's one part of China's massive surveillance strategy to tackle the spread of the coronavirus, which has reached just about every region in the country.
No, it's not. It's to control a people under the regime of communism to the point where you have no rights. This is to implement Agenda 21, 2030 to destroy humanity for the sake of Mother Earth, as they call it, so they can steal the vineyard.
The virus has infected more than 80,000 in China, resulting in the deaths of more than 2,000 people in the country, far surpassing the death toll from SARS.
The difference between 2003 and 2020, is really enormous in terms of the government's reliance on and development of surveillance technology. Almost none of these tools were on offer at that time.
Sophie Richardson is the China director at Human Rights Watch. She says during this public health crisis, China is embarking on an unprecedented use of surveillance by using big data and its citizens. So what exactly is China's surveillance strategy, and can it work to battle the epidemic? There are an estimated more than 300 million surveillance cameras in China. and authorities are using them to monitor Chinese citizens.
Many of the surveillance cameras in use in China now are equipped with facial recognition capabilities, which simply gives the authorities the ability to track who specifically has gone to which precise location.
Combine that with data scraped from hospital records, police files, and public transportation history. All that is stored and linked to national ID cards, which gives the Chinese government granular information about all its citizens. In January, a man who tested positive for the coronavirus used public buses and subways to crisscross China's eastern city of Nanjing. The police posted his journey with specific dates and times on social media, with a warning that anyone who is in that area get tested for the virus. China's public health authorities have been candid about the use of big data during this public health crisis.
大数据它会告诉你，你周围接触的人可能是一出来，我这是感染者。
They even developed a mobile phone app called the Close Contact Detector. The app has a database of people who have tested positive or have symptoms. So as soon as you type in your name and national ID and log in, the app will tell you if you've ever come into close contact with someone who tested positive, or if you're in the clear. So far, more than 200 million people have used the app.
These new and different uses of technology around the coronavirus may help resolve some of the public health concerns, but it's also another way for the government to gather large amounts of information about people really effectively without their consent, and in some cases without even their knowledge.
Chinese health officials say all this data is in the pursuit of controlling the epidemic.
第一呢，我们可以更进一步的摸清底数。第二呢，我们也可以说，我们把这个对相关部门，尤其是我们基层部门的工作呢，提供一些指导。
But could the government legally force us to take an app on our phones? Professor Brad Jacobs, a constitutional expert at Regent University, says no.
We do have protections against searches and seizures by the government.
No, we did. That's only as good as the people that pay attention to the Constitution. When you have a rogue government of a rogue global government, you no longer have those protections.
The Supreme Court just a couple of years ago ruled that the government can't use pings off of cell towers to tell them where someone is without getting a warrant first.
But could the government restrict your freedom if you don't use a contact tracing app? Maybe.
Supreme Court has long held that no rights are absolute. The government can override a constitutional right, at least for a short period, if it can show what we call a compelling state interest.
Michael Doherty, the CEO of LabMD, a medical testing lab who's been fighting federal overreach in his industry for years, is the author of The Devil Inside the Beltway, and he calls a tracing app Big Brother.
It's a huge excuse to give the government more information. And as we're seeing with who infiltrates our government, they will violate our rights and violate anyone's rights for political gain.
The notion that Americans will cooperate voluntarily with a contact tracing app seems to be dead on arrival. A recent poll showed less than a third of Americans would participate in tracing if it's run by the federal government.
I don't know when this was made, but they're already doing it, and there was no consensus on your consent. It almost feels like CBN is trying to play this game with you. Like, well, this couldn't possibly ever come into being, even though it's already being done. There's such a game being played of lies and manipulation. Even the way, look at how he's like kind of thrust forward a little bit. Eyes wide open, strong, confident voice. You need to listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. I'm a journalist. They're lying to you. Maybe nothing. This is like, come to terms with what is happening. I'm so sick of this game playing.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
On the 17th of March in 2018, the Chinese president is recorded here sitting with his back to his party delegates and the People's National Congress. about to undertake what was probably the most important action of his entire life. The red paper that he puts inside of this box is him voting to make himself China's first president for life.
Oh.
And I have to say, this is one of the few times that I've ever seen him looking genuinely happy. His vote is then followed by thousands of others, totaling at just over 3,000, with only 2 against and 4 abstentions.
Wow.
And with this, Xi Jinping takes total control of the Chinese government for as long as he wants, at a congressional session where most had been expecting him to announce his successor.
Wow.
At the same Congress, Xi announces that China's development offers other countries a model for nations that want to speed up their development, and that it's time for China to take center stage in the world and make a greater contribution to humankind.
Imagine a society where everything you do, everything you say, and everything you buy is controlled and evaluated by the authorities. It's not science fiction. In China, it's a reality. From now on, citizens' lives are rated and assessed. This is what the Chinese Communist Party calls social credit.
Here's our chart of excellence models. I'm the second one.
In Fulushan, the villages have been rated for a year. There are good citizens who contribute to the community, and bad ones, those who, for example, leave their trash out. Chong Kejong is featured on the Wall of Honor because of his exemplary behavior.
He got the most gold stars in the kindergarten class. He's a good boy.
It's because I help to keep the village clean. I also help people improve our environment, and I help people become wealthier. I'm proud, but it's also a lot of pressure, because when you're on this wall, you always want to be better.
The social credit rating system began testing 5 years ago in approximately 30 Chinese cities. It will be rolled out across the entire country by 2020. Good citizens will benefit from discounts on their bills and will be able to get bank loans more easily. Bad citizens will be banned from buying train or plane tickets. For the Communist Party, this system is a way to punish and exclude those they judge to be disturbing the harmony of Chinese society.
By using the mechanism of social credit, we'll be able to establish a blacklist of people and create a system of punishment that will be based on a scientific theory. These punishments will serve as a whip to rebuild moral values. Our society needs it.
This morning, Simon Phoenix escaped from this cryo facility. We've had 11 murder-death kills so far. You see, we have become a society of peace, loving, and understanding, and we are, quite frankly, not equipped to deal with this situation.
There have been no deaths of unnatural causes in San Angeles in the last 16 years.
The Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, San Diego Metroplex were merged in 2011. You are in the center of what used to be Los Angeles.
That's great. You'll give me a Marlboro. Yes, of course, right away. What's a Marlboro? It's a cigarette, any cigarette.
Smoking is not good for you, and has been deemed that anything not good for you is bad, hence illegal. Alcohol, caffeine, contact sports, meat.
Are you shooting me?
John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
You literally cannot mandate somebody to wear a mask knowing that that mask is killing people. It literally is killing people. And we the people are waking up, and we know what citizens arrest is, because citizens arrests are already happening, okay? And every single one of you that are obeying the devil's laws are going to be arrested. And you, doctor, are going to be arrested for crimes against humanity. Every single one of you have a smirk behind that little mask, but every single one of you are going to get punished by God. You cannot escape God. You cannot escape God. I'm going to say that again. You cannot escape God, not even with the mask or 6 feet. Okay? 6 feet, like I said before, is military protocol. You're trying to get the people to train them so when the cameras, the 5G comes out, what? They're gonna scan everybody. We got to get scanned. We got to get temperatured. The kids have to go to school with masks. Are you insane? Are you crazy? I think all of you should be in a psych ward right the heck now, because none of you know what the hell you are all talking about. This is insane. And then you want to open this meeting with a prayer to God. Are you praying to the devil? Because God is not listening to that prayer. Because all of you are practicing the devil's laws. What happened to Bill Gates? Why is he not in jail? Why is Hillary Clinton not in jail? Why are all of these pedophiles that are demanding you all to listen to their rules? Why are they not in jail? Oh, is it because you're part of them?
Of smartphone apps available that help parents track down their children. Now, a number of products are targeting little kids on the market. 8 on your side's Meredith Sensulo is taking a look at those trackers for tots.
That heart-stopping moment, you turn around and your child is gone, but new technology is helping you keep tabs on your kids.
Every parent knows the panic. You turn for an instant and your child is gone. It's happened to Rachel Simigo.
Yes, I'm usually yelling for her and freaking out, but luckily it's never been for more than like a minute or two.
Even veteran law enforcement officers like former Tampa Chief of Police Jane Castor have had it happen.
For my particular instance, in a restaurant at Disney, and your children are standing next to you, and all of a sudden you look over and they're not there.
I have an amazing solution for you. It's actually a before it happens type of protocol. It's really simple. It's totally free. It's called, wait for it, Watch Your Kids. With those two things on your face God gave you, watch them. And if you're in a marriage and you have kids, now you have double the set. Yay! You have double the set of eyes. If you have an older child, wait for it. Now you have triple the eyes. Oh, 3, 6, 9. 9 scanning eyes to pay attention and stuff. It's amazing. It's totally free. It's called not being a moron. I'm sorry, but the Bible calls it fool. Don't be a fool. Watch your kids.
That just sheer panic, and your motherly instincts take over.
Now, improved GPS technology with increased cellular enhancement make it possible to track indoors. A number of companies market small, kid-friendly trackers like watches and backpack tags. Some have geofencing and SOS buttons, features that could be useful to Semigo, who has a precocious 6-year-old.
She's never been lost, but she has hidden from me on purpose because she does think it's fun to get in the clothes rack at the store or to run off because she sees a Christmas tree or a blow-up item or something like that.
The product's features and costs vary. Some require subscriptions, but law enforcement pros admit they can be useful tools to help parents have as much information as possible.
There's no harm in the tracking, especially if you're in a situation where you aren't able to be with your child on a continual basis.
Battery life for many of the products currently on the market is a day or two, but new products rolling out later this year promise to last up to a week on one charge. Meredith Sensulo, News Channel 8.
Wow.
Farming has been the driving force of our civilization for centuries. But with an ever-growing population and the increasing impact farming has on our environment, we need to keep innovating the way in which we feed the world. Take the Australian outback. One of the biggest challenges cattle farmers face every day is the sheer amount of distance between them and their animals. Driving 2.5 hours to check on cattle is no exception. To help Australian cattle farmers monitor their cattle from great distance, Rabobank, a global leader in agricultural financing, started Movement.
With Movement, we have the ambition to track and trace cattle in the Australian outback.
At the heart of Movement is the ear tag, a long-range, low-power node that transmits the cow's location, giving all sorts of valuable insights.
GPSing old Nelly the cow.
like location alerts when a cow has broken a fence, or when a bull is looking for opportunities in a paddock it's not supposed to be in, but also the ability to analyze movement patterns to see where a herd
Anti-bull dating.
has grazed in order to make better infrastructural decisions. And by looking at a cow's movement, we even believe we can see when it's going to be fertile. By working closely with Australian cattle farmers, the movement team has discovered which
Cow dating on.
solutions fulfill their most important needs.
It's given us a taste of what this technology can do.
Saving you time, money and looking after your animals in a more humane way.
Movement, driving the production of our food into a new era.
In China, many people probably had not developed that kind of awareness in terms of protecting the privacy, protecting their civil liberties.
Yanzhang Huang studies global health at the Council on Foreign Relations in the U.S. He says many in China want this type of monitoring because it's about life or death.
And when they were given the choices of protecting their health and protecting the civil liberties, probably would choose the former, even to the detriment of the latter.
Wang says increasing population control during a health crisis can be a slippery slope.
This widespread use of surveillance technologies may also encourage the use of the same technologies, surveillance techniques, even after the outbreak, for purposes may not be really justifiable.
People are also a big part of its surveillance apparatus. After all, President Xi Jinping said the fight against the virus was a people's war. Authorities send out text messages telling people to go directly to authorities if they come from Hubei province, where the coronavirus first emerged. And announcements are posted all around town encouraging everyone to monitor each other. Police patrol streets, telling people without face masks to go home. Some managers of apartment complexes go door to door to check on residents' health conditions.
Wow.
This may sort of suggest this revival of this Cultural Revolution era when you saw this people monitor, their neighbors, even their relatives.
Some provinces have started giving an incentive to monitor family members' travel histories and health. In Sichuan province in western...
Oh my goodness! Do you remember in the Gospels when Jesus said that the love of many would turn cold and that people would be divided and that households would be against one another and that children would turn their parents in?
In China, snitching can snag you as much as 5,000 yuan. That's roughly equivalent to a monthly salary that's more than minimum wage.
Wow.
One government in Guangdong province is offering 30 face masks in exchange for snitch reports.
Wait a minute. 30 face masks for snitching? This is not a good deal.
During this public health crisis, China hasn't been the only country to use technology to track patients. In South Korea, health authorities are legally allowed to sift through credit card records, CCTV footage, and mobile phone locations to pin down the travel histories of those infected or at risk.
Wow.
That information is then shared with the public.
She just looked totally annoyed.
In China's surveillance state, not only do authorities have access to more data than other governments, but citizens have no way to opt out of that data collection. Beijing says all this is in the best interest of the public.
Said the communist.
We'll have to be able to see how the virus ultimately played out, who was affected, who wasn't, whether the surveillance technology helped.
Monday at 11. It happens in seconds. Your child wanders off and panic sets in. But what if you had an extra layer of security inside your child?
If it'll save my kid, there's no step that's too extreme.
The technology is here, but just how far would you go to keep your kids safe?
I want to keep my kids safe from this rotten government and the children of disobedience and darkness.
Parents are divided.
I just think that implanting something under their skin
would not be okay. If a small chip the size of a grain of rice could have prevented a tragedy, I think most parents, hindsight would have said, I wish I would have done it.
But our expert insists putting this technology in place is just a matter of time.
It could save a life, reunite a family, find a missing Alzheimer's patient.
Here's an idea. What if getting a database full of a head count of accuracy for every single human being, man, woman, child? The enemies of Lucifer, he hates you. He really hates the children of God. But he hates all of humanity because God loves humanity so much. What if getting all of you chipped like a little kitten was so Satan could go on a search and destroy mission and get every single one of you? Because that's what I think is going on. That's what I think the that I can't say, that starts with a big giant V, like vehicular homicide. That's what I think is going on.
Todd Westby, along with 50 employees, implanting microchips the size of a grain of rice between their forefingers and thumbs, allowing them to unlock doors at work, even pay for snacks with the swipe of a hand. There are some reservations.
There's always the fear of infection, so it's the unknown right now.
Another concern? Employee privacy. What did it take to persuade the holdouts?
Basically, we had to explain to them there's no tracking of the information. It's not GPS or anything like that.
Participation is optional, and many of the employees here say they're more curious than nervous.
I think it's kind of cool. Just pop it up there and it'll work.
And our Chief Business and Economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, with us now. Rebecca, analysts are telling you this is not just this Wisconsin company. This is actually a debate about the future and where this could go from here.
Exactly, David. Industry experts forecast we could see these chips used by hospitals to store our medical records, even at airports to store that passport information. And that is just the beginning, David.
What the hell is that? John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit.
Bad language, chocolate, gasoline, uneducational toys, and anything spicy. Abortion is also illegal, but then again, so is pregnancy if you don't have a license.
Caveman, let's finish with all the Rip Van Winkle and get moving.
How would you describe what the circle is to, say, your grandmother?
It's the chaos of the web made elegant.
Speed round, Paul or John?
Early Paul, late John.
Mario or Sonic?
Early Sonic, late Mario.
Needs of the society or needs of the individual?
Should be the same.
You're most scared of?
Unfulfilled potential.
I am a believer in the perfectibility of human beings. When we are our best selves, the possibilities are endless. At the circle, there isn't a problem that we cannot solve. We can cure any disease, and we can end hunger without secrets, without the hoarding of knowledge and information. We can finally realize our potential. Circlers, do you like to share? We will see it all. If it happens, we'll know. Imagine the human rights implications. There needs to be accountability.
What is this?
The circle has the power to change everything.
It's only our lies that get us in trouble. Things we hide. We care about everybody you care about. Because knowing is good.
This is General William Sullivan with an emergency.
Oh, they cut it off too short. He continues to say, but knowing everything is better. Now you take all this and you combine it with the Noahide sublaws. You're not allowed to worship Jesus. His name will be so illegal. Oh my goodness. His name is so powerful. Saying his name in the near future when the party gets started on the Feast of Trumpets. It could be this year. You will have so many drones come and murder you off just for speaking the name of the Most High. For those who will be here for it.
Emergency message. I'm speaking to you from a CDC clean zone. Outbreak of the deadly Pandora virus is spreading rapidly. Unprecedented threat requires a worldwide quarantine. All ships must remain at sea until further. Humanity must endure. A virus? Stop that! What should we do?
They're buying it. They're buying it. Chillingly plausible indeed, Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal. There is no virus.
Hallyu isn't so bothered. Her Sesame score is high. Life is good and she's used to living most of it online. Soon, her education and medical records and any run-ins with the law will factor into her social credit score. And wherever she goes, someone will follow and ask, who can you trust?
Hey, NBC News viewers,
Wow, when they set this up, literally, when they have the guillotines out, they can take my head first because I don't understand how anybody could put their faith in this world. This stuff is coming here quick. But anyway, guys, just going to show you guys those two videos. Pretty unreal. You guys have a blessed day.
So you got the 5G plus the phones for the monitoring of everything. Right? Everything. The whole planet. Yeah, I'm sure. It's really for downloading movies faster and getting faster internet, I'm sure. I don't even think China lies to their people like that. Add that all to Bill Gates' eyes in the sky that will soon see everything. This Airbus that we've talked about before. Real-time global satellite. There will be no privacy. This is going to be like the gray state from hell. Right? The new generation of the nano satellites that are starting to fill the sky. The same continuing advances in technology that have made these small but powerful systems network everything operating in tandem, operating in collusion together. Possible for operating at the other of satellite spectrum. It means the traditional satellites now pack even more power in their larger volume with important consequences for privacy down here on Earth, or lack thereof. Excuse me. So watching and surveilling the entire planet. Lifetime. No rest. So this article kind of goes over all the little ins and outs, but I'm just looking at sort of a brief overview of all of the technology together. He's the one that wants to give you the big giant V that connects you into that system. Not the mark of the beast yet, but getting a nice little head count on all of you who will be here for it, tracking you. Plus his Airbus and this whole eye in the sky. Right? All of that floating together. Plus he's helping with the food production of the Franken food for the Franken people. And there's Mr. Gates right there. That is not a female. Got these drones in on the action. Enter Elon Musk. And his constellation, they call it. And they use the word dragon too for his different tools and things that he has, putting things up in the heavens. Elon Musk's space company told the FCC that its Starlink unit is now building 120 satellites per month. Oh, this was 4 hours ago. Starlink is SpaceX's ambitious plan to build an interconnected network of about 12,000 small satellites to beam high-speed internet from orbit to anywhere in the world. It's so you can watch movies faster. Get you better internet. And China all went, yes, yes, that's what it is. So this collection of surveillance for the entrapment and tracking of humanity. And they're the ones calling it satellite. Get the whole planet on lockdown. Remember, Jesus told you in Luke 21 a snare was coming. And, oh, look at that. Get the whole planet on lockdown. Yeah, I don't think space junk is your biggest problem right now. Could make the internet 40 times faster. They're calling it Starlink stars. That is interesting. Oh, that is so creepidocious. Elon Musk writes, stay at home in the night sky. You think Starlink. It hurts. It just hurts. It's so evil. April 20th. Look at that. It's a giant global message urging people to stay at home over some areas while changing the words over certain countries to voice his own opinions of them. China sucks was one such message that Asian stargazers were greeted with last week, with Mr. Musk apologizing profusely for the remark, stating he was drunk at the time and he had since gotten rid of the app on his phone that allows him to message billions of people at one time. Wow. Oh my goodness. Yes, the stay-at-home message is very good and shows how the satellites can be used for good, but what's stopping Elon from using the satellites to spell out special offers on a new range of Tesla in the sky to people every 90 minutes? One astronomer pointed out the frequency of the new lights in the sky. Oh my goodness. Man-made stars. He'll only use it for good, though. He promises. He didn't rule out calling whoever he wanted a pedophile in the sky. Don't piss me off and you'll be fine, he concluded. Wow. That's so weird. Chicken fighting? That's gross. That's really evil. Leave animals alone. Okay, so that was weird. Oh, these goobers. It's satire. I hate satire, but I actually don't think that they're too far off the mark, but more with the use of the 3D advertising. These goons. So there's a race with China for their company to catch up with Elon Musk's actual Starlink satellite. 5G is partnering with China. Back here. Unicom to shore up internet coverage for both land and space. Because you know China is so interested in providing faster internet speeds for movie downloads to their people. And so you can see this trap. Wow. They're just going to get everything on lockdown. By enslaving humanity. Okay. So, Camera Rose's channel had put this up. Sahara Summer Dust Forming Intelligent Network. So all of the technologies in tandem together, throw the drones in. Now they have what looks like smart dust to form this network. And we're going to talk about some scripture when we get done showing this. Listen to this. This is amazing.
That's drifted from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean in a 5,000-mile journey towards the United States. Researchers say it's an extraordinary and historic weather event that, while fascinating, is creating serious air quality problems, particularly for those suffering from allergies. While strong warm winds from the Sahara carry plumes of sand over the Atlantic every summer, this particular dust cloud is said to be the largest in 50 years, moving south of Florida over parts of the Caribbean, turning the tropical blue skies and water of islands, including Puerto Rico, into a dense brown hue. Weather forecasters predict it will ultimately make its way into Texas before taking a turn to the east over the weekend. Here in Miami, the distant dust has made for some beautiful sunsets. My videographer Andres Guzman shot this picture recently. The good news is the Godzilla dust storm is providing a respite from any monster storms, like a hurricane, from forming because of its extremely dry air. But with hurricane season now in effect, perhaps this Godzilla dust cloud is the calm before the storm. For the news with Rick Sanchez, John Huddy.
There was a new O-level called computing science, and nobody knew what computer science was. So the maths teacher put a piece of code up on the board and he told the class to change it to do something completely different. And within seconds I was lucky enough to be able to do it, and that was it, I was hooked. I'm Julie McCann. I'm a professor at Imperial College, the Department of Computing. I'm curious about future computer systems and how they're able to adapt to their environments. My approach is to be inspired by biology and nature and the tricks that those systems do and bring that into computer systems. There's a number of trends that are happening in technology at the moment. Sensors are shrinking in size, At the same time, we can do a lot with wireless communications. And all this is coming together to build these tiny systems that can play a massive role in cities. We're miniaturizing these systems further and further. And what we have at the moment are systems that would be around matchbox size. They can be miniaturized in the near future to around the size of a penny. But the aim is ultimately to bring these down to the size of dust. So imagine our near future where we've got these sensors implanted in the environment. We've got a problem ahead of us. If they start to communicate with each other, we're bound to hit a boundary quite soon. And we know this is the Shannon capacity. This is the uppermost capacity for a given space that one can communicate wirelessly in. This has implications for industry in the sense that hit that boundary, basically the communication systems fail. So this is where our research comes in. A lot of the work that we do is borrowed from nature in the sense it's bio-inspired. Bees and creatures like ants and creatures that swarm and have hives have the ability to not have much processing power individually, but they form an intelligent network. We're building these tiny little devices, and these little devices consist of sensing capabilities. They also have processing power, and they're able to communicate with each other wirelessly. In sensor networks, we communicate via multi-hop. That is, the communication sends the data across the network, hopping across the devices in that network. That means more systems can speak at the same time, which means we don't have to worry so much about the Shannon capacity problem. Taking the trend of multi-hop further, in the next 5 years, I can imagine in city environments, your mobile phone being used to relay data across the city itself. So the data will be hopping through your phone and you won't even notice it. That means that your phone can actually be a means of making money for you. What I imagine that this will take in the next 10 years' time is that we will not necessarily communicate all the data back to some sort of central area. What we'll do is process out on the edge. Now, that means that we'll start to push the processing out to these small devices. If we go out to beyond 20 years, we can imagine with miniaturization and the advances in nanotechnology that we can bring these systems down to dust. And if we bring them down to dust, we can get them to monitor environments, but we could also get them to collaborate to form maybe even solid objects to help our environment. I imagine our notion of the cloud will be completely changed. It will no longer consist of single big computing systems. It will be much more distributed and very much decentralized. So the future is small, low cost and low powered.
Climate Watch, there is not one but two unusual weather events impacting the planet this week.
Dusty air coming all the way from the Sahara Desert in Africa.
Dust from the Saharan Desert is blanketing now the Caribbean, and it's not stopping there.
It's one of the biggest dust plumes we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, so you can see it rolling off of Africa and then spreading across the Caribbean. This is as we go towards the end of the week, and then it should eventually be climbing up towards West Michigan.
That dust, 4,000 miles long, is now in the Gulf of Mexico and could actually find its way to our area sometime later on this weekend.
But this year it is remarkable, stretching nearly 5,000 miles. It will reach the Gulf Coast and maybe even the Mid-Atlantic Friday and this weekend.
A cloud of Saharan dust that rivals anything seen in the past 50 years has been racing across the Atlantic Ocean from Africa. The islands of the Caribbean were the first to experience the hazy skies and poor air quality.
The impact it's already having on those who are having breathing issues. Allergists are putting out a word of warning.
Breathing easy. These days, we don't take it for granted.
People who are already predisposed to having respiratory problems, those that have asthma, those that have COPD, it's going to likely trigger the symptoms, so as it normally would. But now that we have COVID, people are going to be confused.
Hacking humans, nanotechnology.
First of all, what you're about to see is going on in you right now, everywhere in you.
Molecular nanotechnology is
the idea of building devices, machines, at a molecular scale. Nano refers to a billionth of a meter, so very, very small. We're getting down to atomic scale.
Scientists have created biobots that are the first of its kind. These tiny little biohybrids and bots are capable of traveling to viscous material through our bodies.
They take submersible nanomachines that can be controlled with UV light. And using the UV light, they can control where these nanomachines take nutrients and take medicines into the body.
As long as we have a way of controlling them from the outside, they can move around very, very quickly, perform a function. If we're looking at operating on a cancer, then potentially they could do that operation for you from within.
It's only 6 months old and has already completed 40 million hours of research on COVID-19. The Southern Hemisphere's newest and most powerful supercomputer.
Today I'm also announcing the launch of a new public-private consortium organized by the White House, the Department of Energy, and IBM to unleash the power of American supercomputing resources, but tremendous help from IBM, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, MIT, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, the Department of Energy's National Labor Laboratories, the National Science Foundation, and NASA. They're all contributing to this effort, and they're fully in gear.
Now, if you guys clicked to watch this video, you're probably wondering, what is smart dust? Now, smart dust devices are small, wireless, microelectric mechanical sensors, often called motes, that can detect everything from light to vibrations. It is a tiny dust-sized device, 0.15 millimeters by 0.15 millimeters, or roughly the size of a grain of salt. Now, this device is fitted with extraordinary capabilities. It has nanostructured silicone sensors which can spontaneously assemble, orient, sense, and report their local environment. This new technology combines sensing, computing, wireless communication capabilities, and autonomous power supply with a volume of only a few millimeters. It is very hard to detect the presence of the smart dust, and it is even harder to get rid of them once deployed. Smart dust is useful in monitoring a real-world phenomenon without disturbing the original process. Now, these are just some interesting facts about this technology. With such a small size, these devices can stay suspended in the environment just like a particle of dust. They can also collect data including acceleration, stress, pressure, humidity, sound, and more from sensors. They can also process the data with what amounts to an onboard computer system. They can store their own data in memory, wirelessly communicate the data to the cloud, a base, or other MEMs, or also referred to as microelectric mechanical devices. 3D printers allow for an incredible amount of complexity that couldn't be handled by previous manufacturing barriers that restricted how small you can make things. The optical lenses that are created for these miniaturized sensors can achieve the finest quality images. It can collect an enormous amount of data. For example, if you take the Internet of Things and times it by a million or a billion, that is the power of smart dust collecting data. Now, if you don't know what I mean by the Internet of Things, it is the interconnection via the Internet of computing devices embedded in everyday objects, enabling them to send and receive data. Now, some practical uses for the smart dust would be monitoring crops in an unprecedented scale to determine watering, fertilization, and pest control needs, identify weaknesses and corrosion prior to a system failure, enable wireless monitoring of people and products for security purposes, measuring anything that can be measured nearly anywhere, enhance inventory control with MEMs to track products from manufacturing facility shelves to boxes to pallets to shipping vessels to trucks to retail shelves. Possible applications for the healthcare industry are immense, from diagnostic procedures without surgery to monitoring devices that help people with disabilities interact with tools that help them live independently. Now, researchers at UC Berkeley published a paper about the potential for neural dust, an implantable system to be sprinkled on the brain to provide feedback about brain functionality. Now, as I just stated that last thing, it's a positive and it's a negative. So you may see the negatives to this technology may far outweigh the positives if privacy is a huge concern. For example, these very tiny devices could be a fear if the government were to use these to collect data on almost everyone, anywhere, at any time. Or they could be simply digested and stored inside of you for constant tracking, and you would have no idea that is even happening. Let me know what you guys think.
Every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Because every street and every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Dr. Chris Piester calls it smart dust.
A smart dust particle or mote is a wireless sensor with sensing, computation, communication, and power in one package.
These all-in-one microcomputers will be small, very small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice. And we've shown that we can make the circuitry small enough and light enough that eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network that can help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
Smart cities in the future will take this low-power, inexpensive, small technology and basically distribute it everywhere.
These tiny computers record information about their surroundings, information they can send to other computers or to you. Smart dust on the tracks will monitor your commuter train so you know if it's running late. Potholes will be able to report themselves and warn your car, and you'll never have to wait for a radio traffic report again.
They're monitoring the flow of traffic and giving you alerts about what route is the right way to go to keep the traffic moving.
Bridges will get a coating of smart dust particles that can warn us when they detect stress fractures, helping avoid deadly collapses. But smart dust will also allow buildings and streets to recognize you and respond accordingly.
I think increasingly the environment will respond to who we are and adapt in consequence.
The city will know where you are if you want it to.
Your workplace will know you. Smart dust at the entrance will boot up your computer. And smart dust embedded in the elevator doors will automatically ring your floor.
Smart dust is going to sense the environment and allow us to improve the way that we live our lives.
No matter how we live in the future city, it will be radically different.
Experiment, das ich im Internet gesehen habe, wo jemand diese Überbleibsel vom Blütenstaub oder Regen oder was auch immer zusammenkratzt. So wie ich hier jetzt den Staub von meinem Auto. So. Und jetzt frage ich euch, ist Blütenstaub magnetisch?
So basically he used a special magnet and it picked the dust up. And the question that is being posed is this in fact the very smart dust? And if If so, that would help to explain why it seemed to have a magnetic appearance to it, because it did stick to it. And you wouldn't think that just regular pollen or dust would possess those type of properties for magnetism. So when you go over to Revelation 12, not Revelation, well, okay, we can go there, that's fine. I was just pondering this question. I've been sitting on this for a week or more. On the scripture, there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a great sign. A woman clothed in the sun, the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another sign or wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red, communist, satanic dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon its heads. Global government. Global government. Communistic, paganistic, global government. Now, this scripture here in 4, I was asking the Lord about this, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. That right there. And pretty much since I've been on this planet and asking my mother, since I was just a little kid, you know, where did the fallen angels come from? What was the deal with them? I have, as well as everybody else on planet Earth, just about been given this scripture to detail their fall. And I don't know what to do with that. That's just what I've always been told. And I also know that with scripture, oftentimes there's many layers and layers and layers to them. It continues, the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, to devour her one new mankind in Christ, head and body, the man-child, as soon as it was born. The heir. The heir. And verse 5, she brought forth a man-child, the one new mankind in Christ, heir, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up, harpazoed, raptured, removed, glorified, up unto God and to his throne. So really quick, this woman Paul tells us, I do not like that. Paul tells us very clearly who in fact this woman is. Give me the King James, please. Got any good images? No. Nay. Okay, let's go to the scripture. But Jerusalem, or Zion, which is above us, is free, which is the mother of us all. Speaking of believers, speaking of the heir. She's not an actual woman. She's a construct of the covenant. The covenant gives birth to the one new mankind in Christ. That is not the nation of is, and you know the rest of the as above, so below nation, it ends in L. A nation of unbelief doesn't give birth to a nation in belief. That doesn't make sense. Everybody parrot pukes that. They're wrong. It doesn't even make sense. Some people will hyper-focus and go, it's Mary. Mary gave birth to Jesus. Jesus is the head of the one new mankind. But this woman here in Revelation, in the back of your mind, you can have Mary, but really it's pointing to this covenant. And Mary also does not provide for you a covenant. Jesus does. Only Jesus isn't a girl. But Jesus dies, is buried, and resurrected, and offers the renewed covenant in his blood in Jerusalem. Therefore, he takes the construct of a woman giving birth to her heir, and he's trying to draw your mind back to Sarah, who gave birth to her supernatural heir, Isaac, that did not come about any other way than by the hope and the promise of God, the hope of the Holy Spirit, giving to her who was A, too old to have kids, and B, barren and sterile, and produces by his miracle power, because he's God, this heir. That's what you're supposed to get. Old school Sarah with God, Abraham, and the product of the heir, Isaac. All of that creates a DNA line forward to get Mary and her husband Joseph. They were together, but before they were together, the Holy Spirit said, an angel went and spoke with Mary and said, hey, God would like to use your womb to plant the seed of the Most High God, the Savior, the Messiah, Emmanuel, Jesus, and so on and so forth. You okay with that? She's like, okay, I'm the handmaiden of the Lord. Do what you will. She, with God's help, produces a miracle child. You cannot have a child without knowing a man. She most certainly does produce a child supernaturally through the power of the Holy Spirit without having the step of the man. He is called the heir of all things, right? So you got to kind of have all that in the background, right? And then Paul brings it all home for you when he explains the end outcome of everything that Christ would ever do to procure this one new mankind in Christ, this do-over humanity, a co-heir with Christ, children of faith, children of the renewed covenant, comes about through this Zion, this renewed covenant made in Jerusalem with Jesus. Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and the covenant produce the one new mankind, heir in Christ, which is what he's trying to get you to understand, paired with his information that Paul gives you here in Galatians when he is originally discussing the difference between the slaves that come from Hagar and Abraham to produce the slave boy Ishmael. All unbelievers fit into the context of where that all goes in his allegory. But he says that of Sarah, Princess Sarah, Abraham, and God, they produce a child heir that comes through faith. It says of Abraham that he believed God and it was credited to him for righteousness. And we'll go there in a moment because as God is discussing these details with Abraham, he talks about Abraham having more children as a he wasn't barren, but his wife was until God touched her womb. He would have more children that were than the stars in the heavens, stars in the heaven, and the sand on the ground. And the natural man, interestingly enough, is made out of this dust. And I was just curious about the nature of verse 4 in Revelation, and we'll go there in just a second. And this smart dust and this attack coming upon the child. What child? The child that Jerusalem is going to have, that God said would be more than the stars and the dust of the earth. And if Satan was trying to get one over on us, knowing that story, and if when God said that a third of the stars fell, was he talking about drones? Was he talking about some type of technological something or other? I can't imagine a satellite coming down, but was it paired up with some type of heavenly technology that's part and parcel of the AI enhanced fallen angels, stars, the technology stars? And if this a third of the stars, is he talking about the smart dust? Because in a tiny little teaspoon of dust, you can have a huge number, a third of all the stars. There's billions of stars. Why would he say a third? Unless size is the issue, and he was trying to point to some type of technological output that has been delivered. Is it the smart dust? I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. I'm trying to make it make sense. It's just a thought that it's my conjecture. It's a question. It's a good question. Have we seen verse 4 pass? This dragon setting up to eat this woman who's not real. She's a covenant. Her children, us. The dragon's tail sweeps a third of the stars. Is there some kind of connection between the stars and the smart dust? I don't know. But dust is so small and teeny weeny tiny. Is there a connection there? Has verse 4 happened? I don't know. So this woman has this child. This child is going to be glorified and raptured with Christ. This child is more than the stars of the heaven, stars, and more than the sand of the sea, of the ground. Dust, sand. Could there be a connection there? I don't know. Verse 27 here says, for it is written, this is Isaiah 54:1 he's going to quote now. Rejoice, thou barren that bearest not. Break forth and cry, thou that travaileth not. For the desolate hath many more children than she which has a husband. And I asked and struggled with this scripture for like 3 to 4 years, asking the Lord, okay, what's going on with Isaiah? Who is being compared here? And finally, after much struggle and prayer and fasting and seeking him and asking him and annoying him with questions over and over and over, I finally got the thought in my mind from him that he was comparing this woman, Jerusalem, the covenant, who brings forth and has more children, as the heir, the many within the heir, the man-child, comprised of the many cells of the one new mankind in Christ, plus Christ as the head, in relationship and contrast to she which hath a husband, the typology, Sarah, who had an heir. Sarah just had one heir comprised of one entity, Isaac. You needed to have an Isaac in order for Abraham and Sarah to become the mother and father of many nations. The heir that is comprised of the many within the one, that is comprised of the head, Christ, supernatural birth, and the body, many rebirthed, reborn, new creation in Christ as a union of one, the many within the one. So he is comparing Zion or Jerusalem, who has more at the glorification that John sees in Revelation 12, we were just at a moment ago, who is saved, not the woman, because she's not real, but the product, the bun in the oven, is saved and raptured and taken to heaven in the fulfillment of everything that God promised to Abraham and all of the children that would result through faith that he goes over in diligence in Galatians 3, verse 29. The children of God, the children of Abraham, the children of faith, not DNA bound, but faith in Christ. And so he is comparing Sarah, who had an heir of one, Isaac, with Jerusalem or Zion, a covenant of the Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Pentecost, where you get reborn. And her procuring the birth of the one new mankind in Christ. That's what's going on here. When you go back, see, that's who's being saved here. Most people will just go, well, it's Jesus. No, the whole thing wasn't just Jesus. Jesus came to become the one new mankind in Christ, the head, the firstborn from among the dead. And in Hebrews 2, it says that he has many more brethren among him. He is the kernel of corn and the kernel of wheat that dies, goes into the ground, he says in John, and produces a crop of people. God is making a crop of new eternal humanity, a do-over. Jerusalem is the covenant that produces the children of God who are the co-heir with Christ, and therefore more than Isaac. But you did need Isaac in the beginning to get you with Jesus, to get you this covenant, to get you Jerusalem, to get you into faith to become the one new mankind in Christ, who, by the way, is being set up for a murder plot by the global government with the satanic, communistic, paganistic, neo-nut job people. And I am just curious if he was trying to warn us that his tail drew the third part of the star. There's like billions of stars. A third of a billion of stars? But if you start thinking about dust, smart dust, global government, has this happened with this smart dust of this technology, of this internet of all things? Have we experienced verse 4, but it was so quiet in the deception we didn't know it? As it's posturing the global government of technology, posturing before the woman who's not a real woman, she's a personification of the covenant, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. They're getting ready to devour us. But then verse 5 happens. And this caught up is the harpazo. It's the harpazo. It's the rapture. It's the getting into the kingdom of light. Where's my Bible hub? I'll show you. If verse 4 happened with that storm, that dust storm, and it might have. Pardon me. Let's go over to verse 5. Star, literally or figuratively? Casting down. A place I put, I drop. Them to the earth. That place where your moral choices will be lived out. Fabulous kind of serpent. Satan. Stood up. In the face of the woman. That woman is Jerusalem, Paul tells you. Give birth. This child. In order that he can devour, eat up. Her child, the one new mankind in Christ, the do-over, everything that God has labored for. And he just wants to globally destroy them all. But Christ isn't going out like that. He's not letting his children of God either. As soon as he was born. And when you get into the Greek of the dragon, it seems to be that it can see everywhere. It's one of its strengths. If all you get out of this is it's Jesus, you've completely misunderstood that God is coming to build a one new mankind in Christ, and he is part of that. Caught up. It's the Greek for harpazo. Seize, catch up, snatch away. By robbery. The thief in the night is coming to take his wife, his bride wife, to go marry. Snatch up, suddenly, decisively, like someone seizing bounty, spoil, a prize, to take by open display of force, not covertly or secretly. I don't think I have it up right now. No, I do not. There is a circulation going around that John Nelson Darby, I think his name is, he's made up the rapture. And there's not going to be a secret rapture. Well, even the Bible says that it's not secret. Oh, the narratives people come up with to try to lie and hide the biblical truth from people. So anyhow, yeah, not covertly or secret. We don't need straw men of destructive heresies, of narratives that have nothing to do with the truth. Now, Genesis 12 is the iconic scripture and image when the Lord calls Abraham out. And Abraham's a big deal. Abraham's like another Adam of a human do-over. Let me show you an image. Hold on. Is Satan evoking this sort of image? This is a conjecture and a question I'm asking. Is Satan evoking this promise all the way back to Abraham? Oh, actually, the picture I wanted, I saw it. There it is. So God is saying to Abraham, I'm going to give you, even though you have no kids, I'm going to give you more kids than you could ever possibly fathom. More than all the stars in the sky and all the sand on the sea. Right? It says that it was accounted to Abraham as righteousness when he believed God. Right? He went from Abram to Abraham. He became the father of many nations, and the new creation in Christ is that child, that heir. So you got stars, And you got the sand, the dusty sand, right? And I'm just asking the question. We're going to wrap up here. Did Satan have this in his mind when he came to attack the byproduct of Abraham's progeny? Just a cool picture on here if I can find it. Oh, go back. See the stars right there? So we know in verse 4 he's not throwing down the fallen angels yet. That'll happen a little later on when you go into verses 7 through 9. So what is being tossed down that has to do with the global government, that has to do with the communistic dictatorship, that has to do with stars, and this technology of the smart dust? And is there a connection between the dust and the sand? And is there a connection with the trying to destroy the man-child? Now, it's not an actual baby. Again, we're talking about images ranging all the way back to the air from Bereshit. Now, this is the last book of the Bible. We're talking bookends here. A promise given, a promise received. And for the woman Israel, who is the nation in unbelief, she is talked about then in verse 6 of Revelation 12. She is quite different than the Jerusalem covenant, the mother, who gives birth to the child in verse 5 of that Revelation 12. Verses 1 and 2 have happened. 3 and 4 may have happened since this reset lockdown nightmare. And that's my question. Has verse 4 happened with this technology deployment of the AI-enhanced fallen angel technology, global government getting ready as a snare to destroy the heir, Jerusalem's heir, us, the head Christ as the body, the one new mankind, the reborn mankind do-over? Because if that is what God is trying to get us to understand, verse 5 is the next. And we're watching for the Feast of Trumpets. And we're going to be doing a video about the Feast of Trumpets, answering some really good questions. See? The tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. Could that be the technology that has the AI-enhanced evil? The fallen angels inside of the code to trap us up, like you've been watching with this whole communistic dictatorship, but on a global basis. And the children of light are taken, stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that he might devour her child the moment it was born, which is a really stupid plan, because when you're born, you get your new flesh. You put on immortality. When you start getting into verses 7, 8, and 9, you hear about a spiritual battle where, there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, Satan, and the dragon fought and his angels, and they were cast down, like for realsies. Oh, look at that. There is stuff getting ready to happen. We shall find out. Oh, and sand and dust go together, by the way. So that's not such a strange question. Put in smart dust into Google and look. Smart dust is coming. Are you ready, Forbes? And it just goes everywhere. It goes into your house. You track it into your house. You know, they're talking about wanting to force people to wear masks inside, to which everybody's question would be like, well, how would they know? Well, they're spying on you through everything. And is it possible you track this junk into your house? And then they want you to get the big giant V so they can track you on the inside. They can track you on the outside. These are made by Hitachi. Is it Hitachi? They measure only less than one. It's 0.15 times 0.15 mm each and have GPS capabilities. Sometimes called smart dust, as they can be sprayed on us and absorbed or taken in foods, drinks, and even injected. Oh, goody. Now, this seriously needs to be blown up because I can't see it. Goosen. What does that mean? Modifications. I will keep a whole host of thoughts to myself right now. Spies in the sky. Researchers are developing tiny, airborne devices that can look and listen as they float. Oh, my word. So this was written November. Oh, no, you didn't. Let me try to get rid of this. November 20th. Gathering data on the fly. I don't know why they have that so small, but certainly needs to be blown up. If this person has his way, we will never think about dust in the same way again. Is it Pister? Is leading a team researching at the University of California, developing tiny electronic devices called smart dust, designed to capture mountains of information about their surroundings. Well, this is so evil. Quite literally floating on the air. You see what I'm saying about Revelation 12 verse 4? The stars that would have a demonic origin, the fallen angels, but within the technology of the quantum computers, within the technology of the smart dust coming down, stars, dust. Are you with me on this? The sands? I don't know. It's a good question. If the project is successful, clouds of smart dust could only be one day from being used in an astonishing array of applications, from following enemy troop movement. Now you're the enemy. Hunting Scud missiles, you mean people that aren't wearing masks, to detecting toxic chemicals in the environment, Ebola, you, and monitoring weather patterns around the globe, who they can send a storm on next. What? What? Kelly Preston, wife of Travolta, dies at 57? No. Kelly Preston? She's so young. Anyhow, the idea behind smart dust is to pack sophisticated sensors, tiny computers, and wireless communicators onto a minuscule mote of silicon, light enough to remain suspended in air for hours at a time. As the motes drift in the wind, they can monitor the environment for light, sound, temperature, chemical composition, and a wide range of other information, and beam that data back to the base station miles away. Hey, do you think China would like to have something like that to torture the whole planet with? Well, look at that. He submitted a proposal to the Federal Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, a branch of the Defense Department. This is military, yo, which agreed to provide about $1.2 million over 3 years to fund the project. You are in such big trouble if you are not in Christ. I will grab this article if any of you want to read it. Thank you so much. God bless.